Thank you, Nick.
Okay, here we go.
All right, the first agenda item. Are you ready, Maria?
Yes.
I didn't see it. Okay, great. The first agenda item of this morning is for the Design Review Board to review and approve the March 26 LAR legal action report and meeting minutes.
It's the, Mr. Chair, is the April 9th.
April 9th. April 9th. I don't know what I was reading. Review and approval of the 4/9/2021 legal action report and meeting minutes. We would need a motion and a second and a vote.
I make a motion to accept those meeting minutes.
All right, thank you very much. Is there a second?
I second the motion. This is Carol Clement.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Susanna. I call for a vote. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
And that's a quorum voting. Any opposed say nay. Okay, wonderful. We are now at the call to the audience. If
Hey,
there's
Nate, this is Chris. Before we start, Maria, I'd like to note I joined the meeting at 7:32.
Thank you so much, Mr. Stevie.
Thanks, Chris. Call to the audience. Anybody here consider themselves an audience, not necessarily connected with a case, not necessarily staff, and not necessarily DRB? And would you like to speak up? Now is your chance. There is no call. There is no audience. So we'll move on to number 4, which is our first case of the morning. It's case number DRB 2109. It's a DDO 2117. Tucson Fire Station number 7. I would like to get the staff to present the summary of this application, and then we'll hear from the applicant directly.
Yes, Mr. Kapler. We have with us Mark Castro, my colleague at PDSD, and he's in charge of processing the DDO, so he's going to go ahead and do the presentations for us.
Great.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the board. This site is it's approximately a half-acre site that's located at the southeast corner of Pima Street and Arcadia Avenue. There are residential properties that abut the site to the south and east. The applicant is proposing to construct a storage and fitness room addition to the existing fire station. Per UDC standards, a 5-foot tall wall for screening is required along the south and the east portions of the site that abut the residentially zoned property. The applicant is seeking zoning approval necessary to allow a substitution of screening material. Specifically, the applicant is requesting the following substitution: to substitute the existing 6-foot tall chain link fence with vinyl wood slats and accompanying vegetative screen in lieu of providing a 5-foot tall masonry screen wall along the east and the south property lines as shown on the submitted plans. In accordance with UDC sections 3.11.1C2, staff is requesting that the DRB review the application for compliance with UDC sections 3.11.1D1 and 3.11.1D3 and provide a recommendation to the Planning and Development Services Director. In related plan review, the Department of Transportation and Mobility, Planning and Development Services Engineering and Zoning have no objections or adverse comments. Tucson Police Department has the following comment: from a crime prevention and design perspective, a 6-foot tall non-climb fence would be the preferred solution. A 6-foot tall chain link fence with prohibited vegetation such as cactus or similar along the fence line would provide an adequate barrier to prevent abnormal use in the area. To date, staff has not received any comments regarding the request from the notice recipients. This concludes staff's presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Great, thank you for that. If there's we should allow the applicant now to do their small presentation to the DRB, and then we'll open it up to the DRB for comments.
Hey Nate, this is Chris again. Maria, this is a fire station that Norris Design is currently under contract on, so I'm not going to be able to vote on this application.
All right, you'll just have to sit in the corner, Chris.
I think
Okay.
actually, if I'm recusing, I think the rules are that I'd have to actually leave the room. Is that correct, Maria? If we're all together in a room.
She's
You're on
muted.
mute.
Yeah, Mr. Stevie, are you also involved with the other 3 DDOs being reviewed today?
Yes, you would be.
I think, yeah, 15, 18, 16, and 7 are which ones we're working on.
Okay, so yeah,
I remember getting up this morning that I was going to look into that before we came to the meeting today, and I totally forgot to.
Yeah, Mr. Stevie, yeah, you will need to leave the meeting.
But I'm okay for we still have another applicant after that, after these, right? So we have or am I looking at the wrong?
We have 3 DDOs today. That's all we have today. Fire
Just
station number 7, number 15, and number 18.
Hey, Chris, are these projects your assignment at Norris, or they're just in your office? In other words, are you personally working on it, or? And I don't know if
I will have direct interaction with all these projects.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you for bringing that up.
Do we still have a quorum?
Yeah, we do. We had a quorum with just the 3 of us.
Okay, great. I guess if that's the only things on the docket, Maria, yeah, I'm gonna have to drop off this call.
Okay, sounds good.
Bye, Chris.
Thanks. Sorry about that.
Okay, could we get the applicant to, this could be pretty quick because we're just substituting a fencing wall material. But I'm curious what a vinyl wood slat might look like. So let's take a look and turn it over to the applicant.
Okay. Hi, my name is John Price. I'm with WSM Architects. We have been working with the city on 4 fire stations, doing remodels for each one, adding to each specific requirements for health and wellness for the firefighters, including exhaust systems for the HVAC equipment and small additions for fitness centers, for decontamination and storage. So all of the 3 that we're going to see today all have these small additions. These are all existing stations within existing neighborhoods with existing fencing that's already in place. Most of these were designed and developed in the 60s and 70s, and our role is to be efficient with the city's and the taxpayer money. And so this is part of the Proposition 101. And so we are trying to be cost effective with every requirement we can. I'm going to share my screen and show you Station 7 here. Let's see here. Okay. All right. So, oops, I am not showing Station 7. All right. Let's see. There we go. All right. All right. So,
excuse me for interrupting, Mr.
Yes.
Price. I just noticed one of our DRB members arrived.
Hi, Rosemary.
Hello. Sorry, I was about 3 minutes late, Maria. If you want to put me on the roll call, thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
So this is Station 7, some photographs, part of the DDO submittal. This station is at the intersection of East Pima and Arcadia. It's a midtown a station. Obviously, you can see from the photographs, it's been here a while, and the neighborhood itself is well established. Around it, we have fencing that follows the perimeter along, and I'm sort of using this cursor here to show the property lines. And instead of putting in a masonry screen, we're requesting a visual barrier of slats in the existing screen. And in some cases, the vegetation will remain. So where we have existing vegetation, that will remain, but we will add slats to it. Someone had asked about the vinyl slats, and so these are a wood-like product, but they will last much longer and be more cost-effective than wood slats. Obviously, in the desert, wood slats deteriorate over time, and these are supposed to last 20 years. And so this is the product that we are offering instead to basically provide the requirements for screening along the two sides of Station 7. And I'm going to introduce Ashley Loberg. She's with our office here since she got up this morning to be part of this. And she's the project architect on these three as well. So with that, I don't think is there anything else, Ashley, we need to talk about for the DRB today?
If I can just go into a little bit of specifics about the vinyl wood slat. So what it is, as John had said, it is a vinyl or HDPE product that is made to look like wood. So it has a wood grain imprint on it. It's a double-walled slat as opposed to a single wall. So it offers much more durability. It's also what is referred to as a winged slat. So John, if you don't mind going to the next page.
Sure.
I think we have a little image of what the cross section looks like and what it has. Yeah, so that little cross section there. So it has little wings on the end that basically fill up some additional space within the gaps of the chain link mesh to offer even more privacy. So this particular product, if you look in the top left-hand portion of the screen, that the approximate privacy that's given by this particular product is approximated at 98%. So we looked at this particular product as a material substitution to meet the intent of opaque screening, and 98% we feel is fairly comparable.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the same product that we'll be looking at for the other two stations as well.
Mm-hmm. So with that, is there any questions?
Yeah, thank you for explaining that, the privacy slats. So is the chain link fence an existing condition that you want to supplement with privacy slats?
Correct.
Oh, okay. And is your chain link fence, you must have already checked this out because this will add a wind load to that fence. You think it can hold, when it becomes 98% opaque, you think it's going to hold up all right?
Yeah, the standards for the city fence, and this is part of the city standards from back in the day, are a heavy duty fence product. So the wall of the pipe is adequate for the wind loading.
Okay. The comment from the Tucson police is like, we would like a non-climbable wall. And right now you have a 3.5-inch fabric. In other words, the size of the hole between the wires is 3. Yeah, that is considered climbable. But when you put this slat in there, does it become unclimbable? Is that, and would it qualify as like a pool barrier because it's not climbable?
I believe so. Yeah.
And additionally, if we go back to the photos that we had of the fence perimeter, so not only around the south and east portions of the site is it just chain link fence, but there's also areas of cactus, other vegetation. There's other fence materials that are backing against this chain link fence. So there are limited areas of access where somebody could feasibly climb the fence anyway, as it is.
Is there a bottom rail to the fence or just a top rail?
It's a top rail. Some areas obviously have some bracing because of the lateral, the linear nature of the fence. They've added bracing in certain locations.
Is there any other comments or discussion points from the board? Yeah, Carol, your hand's up. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. You mentioned existing vegetation, and I thank you for the pictures of the existing vegetation. And that existing vegetation is indeed within the property boundary.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's actually within the wall for most of the, let me just sort of scroll. This first photograph here that I'm circling is the majority of the south wall. There are some pieces in it that are not like this, but this fence and the vines that are growing up on it are within the property line. And so we do not believe that will be, that will basically stay. And then where we have areas that, like this area here, we're going to put slats on our side of the fence. That fence on the other side is the property owners. And so this will fully be slatted. Areas where we've got vegetation, this cactus is on our side, that will remain, and we will put slats sort of around as we need to get through there. So anything that is heavy vegetation, we will probably maintain that, and then where there's not, we will add slats.
okay, thank you for that clarification. So actually, it's going to be a combination of screening by use of existing vegetation and the proposed vinyl slats, correct?
Right. Mm-hmm. Correct.
So with the existing vegetation, will you be improving the health and the look of the existing vegetation?
So we'll actually be planting supplemental vegetation to fill in the gaps of some of those areas as well, along both the south and east portions of the site.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. Will we be reviewing the proposed vegetation, or is that not within our purview?
Let's take a look at the purview for the DDO, Maria, if we could, so that the board can see the criterion that we're looking through. Okay, in order for a DDO, to recommend approval for a DDO, the general findings are, is not a request previously denied as a variance, does not modify a conditional requirement or finding to determine whether the use should be allowed in the zone. Is not to a condition of approval for a rezoning or special exception land use, does not modify a requirement of an overlay, does not result in deletion or waiver of a UDC requirement. The modification applies to property that cannot be developed in conformity with the provisions of this chapter due to physical circumstances or conditions of the property, such as irregular shape, narrowness of lot, and exceptional topographical conditions. This is that point F is what, in my experience, the board has often discussed. Are we granting a DDO because of the physical circumstances? G does not create a situation where proposed development substantially reduces the amount of privacy. H does not create a situation where proposed development will block visibility within the required visibility triangle. does not create a situation where the proposed development will cause objectionable noise, odors, trespass lighting. And then finally, does not create a situation where the development will result in an increase in the number of residential dwelling units, which does not apply to fire stations. And we does not and then finally, the screening modification does not lower the height of a required screening device to a point where it does not accomplish its purpose. These DDOs have a lot to do with the buffer between properties. So that's kind of what we're thinking about as we hear these applications. And the requirement, the code requirement is for a masonry screen wall. They are asking to avoid building a masonry screen wall because they have a large property. And they would instead like to add privacy slats to an existing chain link. So is the chain link, so now we look at that chain link, it's has previously been denied. I don't know the answer to that, but I'm assuming it has not.
Mark, do you know?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Has the request for the chain link secure privacy slats been previously denied as a variance request?
No, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so that we can just go through each one of these. And I saw your hand, Rosemary. If you want to interject, please go ahead.
Thanks. Yeah, I think my question was answered when I looked at the drawing closely. It looks like the height of the chain link fence is 5 feet. And does that meet the requirement? That's my only question.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thanks.
Excellent question. Is 5 foot the code requirement for a masonry screen wall?
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
Okay. All right, so let's go through our list here. Do you think that this chain link fence would modify a conditional requirement? No, I don't think it will change that. Is it and it's not a condition of approval. There's been no approvals made with the condition of a masonry wall that I know of. It does not modify an overlay zone. Is this particular parcel in an overlay zone?
Mark? I don't believe it is.
No, it is not, Mr. Chair.
Okay. And this chain link fence does not result in deletion or waiver of a UDC requirement. I do not believe it does, but if someone has a reason to believe it does, they should let me know. The modifications apply to the property that cannot be developed in conformity with the provisions of this chapter due to physical circumstances or conditions of the property. So they're trying, the test here is, why can't you do a masonry wall? Well, we can't do a masonry wall because of physical circumstances or conditions of the property. It's irregular, it's too narrow, it's too topographically challenging. I've not seen that. So let's hear from the applicant the rationale for the DDO. Is there something prohibiting you from following the masonry wall? And Mark, your hand is up.
Yes, Mr. Chair and members of the board, I just want to clarify for that specific finding. In most cases, that would apply to setbacks or where we have landscape borders where we're, adjusting the square footage, modifying the square footage of a landscape border, where you may have a 10-foot wide street landscape border required, but in one area you may be only to do 5 feet, but then you can make it up for in another area where you can do 20 feet, say. So that's kind of where that specific finding comes into play. The thing to remember here is that with the DDO, it is considered a design option, so there's really not a, it's not that they're going through this process because there's a hardship. It's more of a design option, and what they need to demonstrate is that what they're proposing is a better option than a masonry screen wall. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's helpful, Mark. So they're asking for an exception as a design choice, not
Correct.
because they ran out of options and cannot do a mason wall. It's that their design has selected this and they believe it has all the properties that would meet the intent.
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
All right. Well, then this would just not apply. They're not modifying the property is, yeah, I guess this one does not apply. Next one, the chain link fence does not create a situation where the proposed development substantially reduces the amount of privacy. We saw that the privacy slats would be 98% opaque. And if you do a really good job on masonry, it would be 100% opaque. If you do a nice job. So I think it is about the same in terms of privacy. I think it achieves its goal. But let's pause and ask what the other members might feel about that.
I agree. I think the privacy contributed by the slats will be sufficient.
Okay. Thanks, Rosemary. H does not create a situation where the proposed development will block visibility within the required visibility triangle on adjoining streets for either vehicular or pedestrian traffic. We have not seen any exhibit discussing that. But yeah, what could the applicant talk to that one? Are you guys interrupting a visibility triangle?
We are not. This is an alley and an adjacent property. So for Fire Station 7, this is it does not obstruct the site visibility triangles. They're actually shown on the site plan, and there is no obstruction.
Great. And this chain link fence will not cause objectionable noise, odors, trespass lighting. So your renovation in general, is it going to increase any noise, odors, or light?
No. Each addition is internal. It has a few windows and doors, but will not increase any of those items to the neighborhood.
And so, in my way of looking at it, for the have an existing chain link fence now, when they're all done, they'll still have a chain link fence. They are not introducing any noise, odors to the adjacent properties.
Mm-hmm.
And J does not create a situation where the development result in an increase in the number of dwelling units not applicable. So how do we feel about this criteria, board? Is there any sticking point that you want to discuss?
I don't.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to this number 3, specific finding for the screening modification. And this one, Rosemary cut to the chase already. But we need to make sure the modification does not lower the height of the required screening. And we have a 5-foot chain link, and we're going to substitute that for a 5-foot masonry. That's the entire purview of the design review board in this application, correct? Is the fence. We are not reviewing any of the, they're not counting any of the existing vegetation as screening. Is that true?
That is correct, Mr. Chair. The purview of the board is to determine whether or not the substitute screen material still meets the intent of the screen wall, which is to provide the visual barrier and privacy, and not to lower the height beyond what is required.
Yeah. It won't provide the same sound benefits that a block wall would. Carol.
Well, actually, their proposal is a combination of existing vegetation and the new vinyl slats. So I would like to see, if possible, a little more information on the state of the existing vegetation, as well as what the maintenance plans of the existing vegetation will be.
That's a great point. I think that I heard that you're going to put privacy slats where you can and keep the vegetation without privacy slats, or is it
well
all the way around the way around the horn with privacy slats?
There's a few areas that the vines are located that are basically opaque, and those will be areas that we won't be adding the slats, but essentially everywhere else where you can physically get to the fence and add the slats, we will be adding the slats.
In this image, could you show me approximately where those areas are where where the slats are intended to be added? Could you go around with your little hand? Thank you.
Okay. Actually, let me.
I'll stop sharing my screen.
Well, that's the image. So just keep, if you, I'll just verbally. So there's a white truck in the street on the right hand of the screen. The fence starts approximately at that point, and there'll be privacy slats running all along the north base, and you can just keep going. As you see the wood slats, we will continue to put the vinyl slats through. And then as you get to basically almost to the end of the tree, that's where the vines are. And that's the one area we won't be having slats. As you can see, that it's opaque now. And then there's another tree from the other property. As you keep going, probably another 20 feet. That's where the slats will pick back up, and they'll run all the way to the intersection of that and the north-south fence. And then the north-south fence is actually an alley, and that will entirely be covered with the slats.
Okay.
And then I believe you had I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. Carry on if you haven't finished. I just had an additional question.
I was going to mention that there are areas that our landscape architect has deemed needing of additional landscaping and is shown on the landscape plans as part of the development plan. I believe it's page, let's see, what is it? It's 405, and we're augmenting the existing landscape with additional landscaping shown along the fence line to accommodate for our concerns about screening, and that's what we've added the additional landscaping to it.
Mr. Chairman, we are not reviewing this. This is not part of the application, the landscape plan.
Yeah, they're not. You know, this isn't in Rio Nuevo where we're looking at that that set of criteria that we have been recently. This is really only screening between uses of property, and if they are, however, if they're proposing plant materials as part of their screen, then that is part of this application. So if they're proposing a plant material that we don't feel equal to, so if the plant material plus chain link fence is not equal to or greater than or equal to the masonry wall, that would be part of our criteria.
Just to be clear, this was a design option provided by the city for this project. So I sort of deferring to Mark here to make sure that, you know, this was basically when we went to the city's development plan or development office, this was something that they offered as an option. That would be equal to masonry. So I just want to make sure this is not like a variance or something else.
There's been examples of plant material offering inadequate screening and as a DDO for sure. But your application is privacy slats plus chain link in some areas, and chain link plus existing vegetation in other areas are equal to and accomplish the same as a masonry wall. Mark and Susanna, you both have your hand up.
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the board, and Mr. Price, to clarify, if you are proposing plant materials in place of the slats in areas where you're not providing slats, then that plant material is acting as the screen. That is within the purview of the DRB to determine whether that vegetation is sufficient to provide the screening. If it's supplemental to providing slats, in other words, you're going to have slats and then you're proposing vegetation in front of it. You know, that again is, we're looking at the slats as the substitution.
Right, and so it's the landscape shown is supplemental too.
So then we need to so the question is, it's two different things, and it's real easy. If you were going to put slats in all the way around, then we don't even need to consider the choice of plant materials, because the slats by themselves are the application. And that's kind of the way it was presented by staff. But when we look at the finer details, it appears that there's going to be some openings in the chain link fence with no slats, and those would be covered by your existing plant material. And the design review board would like to know if those plant material are going to be satisfactory. And it looks like who's got their hand? Carol, you've got your hand up.
Oh, sorry, I meant to put it down, but actually, okay, so here we have the landscape plan, and I do see the plant materials proposed. The Senna was Lesniae, Puntia ficus indica, but I also see the note that these plants are going to be hand watered. How reliable is that? I'm confused, Nathan, I'm sorry. Are we reviewing the planting plan now or not?
We are, because the plants are part of their screen.
Okay. I'm looking.
Okay.
Could you scroll up so I could see more of the planting schedule? Yeah, that's good. That's good.
While Carol reviews, I have a quick clarification. So wherever we have new planting, will that be backed with the slats?
If we can get the slats in there, yes.
Okay. So let's go. If we could, okay, let's go to the east elevation where we see the Senna was Lesniae, and then I see a note 5 foot, hard to read, but I think I see it right, 5 foot chain link fence with slats. So that entire length will have slats, and you're just adding the landscaping. Yes, thank you, Maria. You're adding the landscape plants as aesthetic improvement.
Correct.
Okay, so let's go down, if we could just go around the property one more time, down to the south elevation, and I see landscape plan with the symbols. Is that there's two different symbols. What is that, the Lesniae and the Texas Ranger? What am I seeing there? I can't.
So the sort of half circle, that's the half circle, 2 lines is a cat's claw. The
right. Okay. Yeah.
Is a shrubbery, a senna.
Oh, okay, go up to the schedule. Oh, you have Lynn's Legacy. Okay, that's not a particularly tall leucophyllum. It typically, I think, gets more 3 feet. So let's go back to the south property line, please. And, okay, so does that chain link fence receive slats?
Yes.
The whole length of it? Okay, then moot point almost.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and let's go to the west edge one more time. Thank you.
West edge does not require screening.
Why is that?
It's the
Yes.
street front.
Oh, it's a street.
Yep, it's on North Arcadia Avenue.
Great.
Okay,
Just
and
to
then,
be clear, part of that south side isn't getting the slats where that vine is.
Mhm.
I just had an additional question. I wondered what was the feedback from any of the was there any feedback from any of the neighboring properties?
So this went out to the neighbors, and Mark, unless you know otherwise, I've not seen any comments from any of the neighbors about this proposed DDO.
That's correct. Staff did not receive any comments.
and then if we could just go up one more time to the north property. I know that's where the cat claws are. The existing landscape and to remain in place. But there is no fencing. Okay.
So, Carol, thank you for that careful review. Do you feel that the plant material is going to accomplish the screen that we want?
I question the use of the Lynn's Legacy as the selected variety of the Texas Rangers. That, I believe, is not a tall Texas Ranger as typical with the green clouds or the white clouds. You might want to review the selection of that particular variety to a taller Texas Ranger. The existing cat claw, yeah, that's good. The Senna was Lesnii. That's not a particular screening shrub. It tends to have a more open growth canopy, but it's okay. It's not the best choice, but I understand it. It's a good native to use, so I appreciate that. The Apuntia ficus indica is very good as a screening material, but I do question that these plants are going to be hand watered. How reliable is that as a permanent screening material?
This is a fire station. It is going to be personnel will be there every day as part of their general building and site maintenance. This will be part of what they do when they're on there. So basically the firefighters have essentially roles and tasks that they need to do while their shift is going on, and this is one of their tasks. They maintain the grounds.
Okay, that's very good. But looking at the existing state of the existing shrubbery, it doesn't look very well maintained.
Yes, there was no landscaping prior to, and so it is whatever was sort of voluntarily came up in the back area.
So how does the committee feel about the idea of hand watering and maintained by the firefighters? Do you?
I think that that's a good intention, but I don't think, I think there's a great potential for that to be one of the lowest priorities as first responders is to water the shrubs at the edge of the parking lot. So I would just say, whatever recommendation we make, we might want to, we require them to put some irrigation, some automatic system irrigation.
I would agree with that comment, Mr. Chairman.
And I'd also like to say, I'm thinking about a fire station and what it means to a community, and you're going to put up you're going to put up a vinyl screen, and I think I would be more. It would make more sense to me if it was a residential property or someone like that. But does the design team feel that vinyl slats match the level of construction that is expected at a fire station? And this is a design option, and so somehow you guys are recommending vinyl slats and a chain link fence at an institution that is a fire station. I'm curious if this is, would we expect that? Could we expect the next shopping center to have chain link fence as their buffer? I don't think so. So why would we expect a fire station to have chain link fence? I'd like to hear some discussion on that point.
Okay. We're actually working with the city on 4 stations, and we are using Proposition 101 funding for that. The funding was specifically designed for the station itself and not necessarily the sites. The funding was for providing health and wellness for the station, upgrading the components within the station to help basically protect us, the citizens. Due to the additions, the requirements for the city are to go through the development plan process. And so we are going through the process. And one of the things that has come up with most of these stations is they're in existing neighborhoods that do not currently meet the existing standards for the development for the city's land use code. And so we are looking for a cost-effective way to fulfill the requirements of the UDC while providing the funding to those specific goals of the project. I can appreciate, Nathan, your discussion about the aesthetics and the appearance of a institution like a fire station in a neighborhood. But with limited resources, we felt it would be best to use those funds into the station itself to help support the firefighters and therefore to support us, in lieu of taking what limited funds we have to basically build a masonry wall into an existing area that already has, granted it's not full screening, but it was never required to have screening before now. And so we made the decision to use the funds into the station to support the community and to do a cost-effective screen wall. So that was the decision.
Yeah, thanks, John. That makes sense. And I think when your project is done, and if you have a chain link fence up, that fact will never be forgot that we ran out of money and just did a chain link fence. But that's not the DRB's purview, I guess.
Yeah,
go ahead, Maria.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say, Mr. Kapler, members of the DRB. The purview of the DRB is what is limited, what is specified in the UDC, like you just went through it. The financial aspects of a project are not purview of the DRB.
Well, and there isn't a criteria that says, is it appropriate to the project? Our other criteria does make sure, like at the Rio Nuevo, it does make sure that it's complementing the architecture surrounding it. So is there any other comments, or would someone like to make a motion on this DDO?
I just have one other comment. Since we're using existing landscaping in place of the privacy slats in some locations, I would just want to make sure that they have plenty of additional privacy slats on hand in case the landscaping were to die off and need to be replaced. I think that would make sense for the fire station to store some additional privacy slats that they could add if needed.
Okay. Yeah, the city can maintain overstock.
And I guess with me, it's like I understand this is a utilitarian response, but the positive to me is the longevity of these slats, because from a distance, if they're well maintained, it's one thing. It's when these slats get all over the place and just look like a real mess down the road that it becomes a kind of more of an eyesore, I would say. So I guess it sounds like these are pretty substantial, and I assume, in terms of if some of the landscape takes over, or, there'll be a maintenance plan with these slats like there will with the plants, just in case some don't hold up as well, I guess. Because that would be the difference with the masonry wall, really. It's like, sometimes you're repainting it, but it's not the same kind of maintenance issue if, it doesn't hold up.
Someone's got their hand up.
Yeah, it's Carol Clement.
Go ahead, Carol.
I'm willing to take a stab at
A motion?
a motion.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I just want to check with the other committee members. If I add the condition within this motion that the condition of a permanent irrigation system be included, how do the other members feel about this before I move ahead with the motion?
If we add that, it would be a recommendation on our part, correct? Or are we able to mandate it?
It looks like subject to the following conditions is in the pre-formatted statement there.
It would be a condition that the director would take into consideration.
Yeah, everything that we do, Rosemary, is a recommendation.
Good point. I think it makes sense to add the irrigation. I mean, if part of the duties of our first responders is to take care of the station, maybe installing an irrigation system is a good way to do that.
Right. I did look up the growth height of the Lynn's Legacy Leucophyllum Texas Ranger, and I was wrong. It does say that it will grow 5 feet tall. So I think that species selection is a good one. The Apuchia is a good one. The Senna Weslesii, I'm all good with. They're all drought tolerant plants, but given our warming climate, they're going to need irrigation to establish and grow.
Great.
Okay, so I will go ahead and make a stab at a motion. I'm terrible at this, you guys, as you know, but I'll try. All right. The Design Review Board has reviewed the proposed design development option and recommends to the Planning and Development Services Director approval, finding the application in compliance with the criteria established in the UDC section 3.11.1.D1 and .3 attachment A, subject to the following condition: that a permanent automatic irrigation system be installed.
Great. Good motion. There's a motion on the table. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Seconded. Thank you by Rosemary. I'll call for a vote. All in favor say aye or raise your hand. Aye.
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 Any opposed say nay. All right, the motion has carried. I'm hoping that our thorough discussion of that is going to carry forward and pay dividends in the next two cases. Next case is case number DRB 21-10, and I'll turn it over to staff for a report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the board. So DRB-21-10, that's DDO-21-18. Tucson Fire Station number 15, substitution of screening material, and address is 2002 South Mission Road, R2 zoning. So this is a 2.13 acre site that's located west of the South Mission Road and West Silver Lake Road intersection. The site is primarily surrounded by residential uses, with the exception of a church to the west. The applicant is proposing to construct a storage and fitness room addition to the existing fire station, and per UDC standards, the 5-foot tall wall for screening is required along the southeast portion of the site that abuts the residentially zoned property. The applicant is seeking zoning approval necessary to allow the substitution of screening material. Specifically, the applicant is requesting the following substitution: to substitute a 5-foot tall chain link fence with vinyl wood slats and existing vegetation in lieu of providing the 5-foot tall masonry screen wall along the southeast portion of the property boundary as shown on the submitted plans. In accordance with UDC section 311(1)(c)(2), staff is requesting the DRB to review the application for compliance with UDC sections 311(1)(d)(1) and 311(1)(d)(3 and provide a recommendation to the Planning and Development Services Director. In the related plan reviews, same as the previous case, the Department of Transportation Mobility and Planning and Development Services Engineering and Zoning have no objections or adverse comments. The same comment from Tucson Police Department applies. That's from a crime prevention and design perspective. A 6-foot tall non-climb fence would be the preferred solution. A 6-foot tall chain link fence with prohibited vegetation along the fence line would provide an adequate barrier to prevent abnormal use in the area. And as with the previous case, to date, staff has not received any comments regarding the request from the notice recipients. I'd be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Great, thank you, Mark. And if we could take a quick peek at the application, we don't have to repeat our conversation that we just had. It's all fresh in our mind. Let's take a look at it.
Okay, I'll share my screen. Let's see here. This one is a little different because the screening requirement is only for one small portion of the property. This area here that actually has a retention basin. These are photos of the station, and then when I go to the image of the retention basin, this is the area in question that is adjacent to the property. All other sides are facing public right-of-way, and therefore no screening is required. With this area from basically the bulldozer to the setbacks on the street, this was the screening requirement. Once again, the use of the chain link fence with slats would be in this area, and per the, let's see here, go to the next page. We proposed this essentially a screen wall for this entire area to screen the adjacent property from our property, and that's the only area we're adding. And at this point, this is the complete screening requirement as we understand it from the city of Tucson.
And if I can just add to John's statement, that part of the reason why we're pursuing the material substitution at this particular station is because of that basin that essentially sits between the fire station and the adjacent residential property, that there is a constructability issue with kind of getting into that basin, constructing a masonry wall along the other side. You know, and so part of the decision here is how do we meet the intent of screening between the fire station and this property in a way that is feasible. And the option that we came up with is constructing a fence on the fire station side of the basin that would then provide privacy between the activities of the fire station and that neighboring property, is how we came to this conclusion.
Yeah, there's drainage requirements too that the masonry wall would start to impact. But in a sense, it's an odd requirement when you look at the whole station. It's basically surrounded by public right of way except for this one adjacent property, and that's the screening requirement for it. So.
All right, thank you for showing us that. I'll open it up to the DRB to see what they might think. Carol, your hand's up.
The detention basin is on, I'm understanding it to be on your property, and its drainage, its purpose is stormwater catchment from the street or the property?
Essentially, it is the property. Originally, this was the original Mission Road, and then it got realigned farther off the property. And so this area slopes from high to low, and this basin here is picking up pretty much all of the drainage off the site to this basin.
So that would include washing their trucks, all the drainage. So, and it's a good sized basin by the looks of it.
Yeah, there's if I go back to the photos for a moment, you can see, let me zoom into this one here. The street above is already up almost 10 feet from the property. You're looking at this face here where the car is the parking lot. And then as it travels down, let me see if I can find a better picture. Let me go to the next page. Yeah, as you can see, basically we're picking up about a foot every 50 feet here. So there's a pretty significant slope.
Okay, good. All right, so I'll just go ahead and say it. I don't like the slatted fence there at all. Why aren't a vegetation barrier along that southeast corner of your property within the detention basin where it will be getting water, where we can put real plants that provide cooling, oxygenation, all that stuff? Why did you choose a fencing there where you, seems to me, you have a great opportunity because there is a basin there to put plants?
Mm-hmm. I don't believe that was an option with the DDO, but I could be incorrect. Mark?
With the substitution of screening, if you are proposing vegetation, it just has to be able to, meet the intent of a screen wall. And the DRB has reviewed previous cases where, in some areas, they were just proposing vegetation, but it would obviously take a lot of vegetation to meet the intent. So it's possible. And the DRB can speak to that from previous cases.
There is existing vegetation that exists within that basin. If we scroll up on the screen and look at that southeast picture, that there is quite a bit of landscaping that exists in there already. But in order to meet the intent of opaque screening across the entire distance that's needed to screen our property from the adjacent residential property, is why we propose that screen, to ensure that the opaque screening is provided and not just reliant exclusively on the vegetation.
Right. I immediately thought the same thing that Carol has brought up. This is like a fence that's not really a fence because you just walk right around it. It's not a barrier of any kind. It's only a visual, and it's incomplete, right? It's only a portion of the line, and the whole property is open every other which way. I would rather see, this is where like it meets the code, and it's just going to be a puzzle for everyone's going to be like, what's that fence? Well, why does the fence start there and end there? And the only people that can understand it are the people that have digested the building code.
Oh, this is great. Yeah. Okay.
Where's this? Okay, that's the, okay, now I see.
Yeah.
And it looks
Yeah.
like the neighbor has a block wall.
Correct.
We were not allowed to use that as the screening.
Right.
Could you put up a wall right next, a fence right next to theirs on the other side of the basin that no one will ever see? That doesn't count, huh?
The problem was getting over to the basin and digging into the basin. We felt that would be that was actually more of a physical constraint to build into that because their property line is actually we're not exactly sure if that's on the property or that wall is inside their property. So
well, I'd like to see a wall of trees right there.
Yeah.
Because it's so set back from the property line, it would make a lot more sense to have a wall of some sort of tree there than a chain link fence. But that's one person's opinion.
I agree with Nathan. I think a wall of trees along toe of slope at the bottom of the slope that's closest to the fire station, a wall of trees or a few trees to fill in between the spaces, and then perhaps something like Dodonia viscosa, hopseed bush, or use your Opuntia ficus indica plant as your screening plant, which in the other project you are proposing as possible screening material. So perhaps repeat a similar tact here. Fencing here seems ridiculous, where you have a water retention basin where plants will be getting watered. I would much rather see vegetation as your fencing, and I think you can successfully provide, with good maintenance, the required screening.
Yeah, it also could be more of an architectural piece if you used a piece of ornamental fence that you could plant on as a screen. Then it would read more as a screen than as like an enclosure. But those are style points. I guess what we need to stick to is the chain link fence solution a substitute? What do other folks think? Rosemary and Susanna?
Yeah. So I tend to agree that a freestanding piece of chain link fence doesn't really add to the project in terms of aesthetics. It screens, but I'm not sure it screens in a positive way. And I think the idea of using landscaping in place of that is a good one.
Thank you.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, I guess this is for the neighbors. Yeah, I mean, assuming we have to have that privacy, it does seem kind of crazy just to create this freestanding wall. And it does seem like, environmentally there should be, I know it's not part of our purview, but that should be part of all our purview all the time, it seems like.
Well, we could make a recommendation that they come back with a vegetation screen.
May I also say that a vegetative screen, perhaps you could put a couple of picnic tables under there for the firefighters, something like that. Make it, you're shaking your head, Mr. Price.
Oh, I'm sorry. That area is a detention basin, and I'd be there'd be sort of maintenance issues with putting in additional places for them. Also, the fire department usually likes to have those places secure. So in creating an area out there that's open to the public, you would probably invite, I'm not saying you shouldn't invite the public onto public property, but they would not want to have their area in a non-secure space out there in the retention basin.
Well, we don't really get to design it for them. We just have to evaluate if the chain link fence is as good as a masonry wall. I mean, that's our real decision is this chain link fence equal to a masonry wall? Because the code was sort of rigid. It's always a masonry wall. And sometimes there can be other design options. This is the way to get something other than a masonry wall. They're proposing a chain link fence with privacy slats. We've previously approved that on the last project. This project, the site condition and the fact that it's not existing already are different. So we could say we recommend a wall of trees. We don't have to tell them which trees. And then they would know that, oh, good, we can plant trees and come back and get, the design review board is going to be on our side. They just didn't want to show up with something less than the chain link fence.
So just to clarify, is there an opacity requirement on the screening wall that the trees would have to meet?
That's correct. It has to meet the same intent, so it has to be able to be opaque.
Rather than trees, I would like to suggest shrubs, tall shrubs, because the trees, you get the canopy overhead and you still have view through from underneath. It could be a combination of trees and shrubs, but perhaps shrubs or cacti.
And if we're relying on vegetation for the screen, it may take a few years before they accomplish the visual barrier. So maybe the answer is, yeah, go ahead with your chain link, but add some shrubs to it. I don't know.
Well, to me, the important thing is that the runoff of the water continues. So if there is a fence that is, I don't know how the topography of the site is, but I imagine a lot of that is running into there. So in a sense, a chain link would be more pervious to that water than, obviously you can put holes in a masonry wall, but it seems it would let the natural flow of the water continue better.
All right. You see the challenge that we face is here's a site, here's a code, try to solve it. And I think the chain link fence is a solution. And vegetation could be a solution. Ornamental iron could be a solution. They could go with a block wall. They all have different pros and cons. But here they are applying for a chain link fence. So we've already gone through all the criteria. Is there anything that the chain link fence is not doing for the applicant that would cause them to be not eligible for this DDO? I guess we'll just go around the horn here. Carol, is there anything that this chain link fence, any reason why this section of chain link fence would not be eligible for a DDO?
Well, not according to the criteria, but I think we can do better for our environment than just a chain link fence. At the very least, I would like to see chain link fence with added vegetation. And
Okay, that's good. I'm going around the horn on the order that it appears on my screen. Rosemary?
Do you mind if we
think
take a look at the criteria again? I feel like there's an aesthetic piece that we're missing here, and that's where the chain link fence with vinyl slats misses the mark for me is in aesthetics.
Yeah, search for it. I don't think I remember any aesthetic criteria.
I didn't see it either. There should be.
And Susanna, your thought?
Yes, who made this criteria list?
Yeah. Would it be a thought that chain link fence with no slats with vegetation? So we have a little cost reduction of the slats with vegetation under permanent irrigation.
That would actually be an increase in cost. We have no irrigation system on this site.
Ms. Clement, members of the DRB, again, financial considerations are not part of the purview of the DRB.
Can we just explain why we need the visibility screen in the first?
I said that a couple of years, I mean months ago. We've got I don't know, in this particular case, if you know, it's a requirement of the UDC.
Oh.
And we are not allowed to have a result of a deletion or a waiver of a UDC requirement. That's point number E.
Well, I mean, if we're comparing the chain link fence to a masonry wall, and those are the two options, I think in terms of aesthetics and improving the look of the site, which is what screening would hope to accomplish, the masonry wall is far better than putting up a freestanding chain link fence, to my view.
But
scroll down to paragraph 3, Maria. That's where. That's just the height.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see a point here where we can say we object to a chain link fence with privacy slats, as long as it's the same height and it's the same opacity. We're not in a special overlay, or yeah, special overlay. So I think, board, that I think that we should probably approve this chain link fence, even though it may not make any sense outside of this criteria. We could, on our motion, maybe add a comment back to the director that we don't think that there needs to be any screening beyond landscape materials, and then they can take that, they can do what they want with that comment, but at least they'll know our feeling on it.
I think we should at least do that. I mean, I think
Yeah.
requiring screening and adding a piece of freestanding chain link fence is not an enhancement to the site.
So the motion would be like, we recommend approval and have the following comment to the director. We do not feel that adding a chain link section is adding value to this property, and we would prefer to see additional vegetation. It's not really a condition. It's with the following comment to the director. Maria, you want to take Rosemary, you want to take a attempt at a motion?
Sure, I can do that. The Design Review Board has reviewed the proposed design development option and recommends to the Planning and Development Services Director approval, finding the application in compliance with the criteria established in UDC section 3.11.1.d.1 and .3 attachment A, subject to the following conditions. We recommend not requiring screening in this situation due to the fact that we don't find it to be an enhancement to the site and would prefer to see landscape vegetation in place of screening.
Great.
Yeah.
There's a motion on the table. Is there a second?
I second the motion.
Thank
Carol.
you. Thank you, Carol. I will call for a vote. All in favor of this motion, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. The ayes have it, and the motion is passed. Thank you. Thank you, Design Review Board. We have one more case. Number 6, which is DRB 2111, DDO 2119. Also, a Tucson Fire Station number 18, going for a DDO in their screening material substitution. And I'll ask for a staff report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the board. So the address of this site is 1855 West Drexel Road, and it's R2 zoned. This is it's located on a 4.74 acre site, located at the southeast corner of Drexel Road and Oak Tree Drive. The site is next to a school to the east and to a park to the south. The applicant is proposing to construct an addition to the existing fire station that consists of living spaces, an apparatus bay, and storage. And per UDC standards, a 5-foot tall screen wall is required along the east and south portions of the site that abut the residential zone property. The applicant is seeking zoning approval necessary to allow the substitution of screen material. Specifically, the applicant is requesting the following substitution. Substitute a 6-foot tall chain link fence with vinyl wood slats and vegetation in lieu of providing a 5-foot tall masonry screen wall along the east and south project site boundaries, all as shown on the submitted plans. In accordance with UDC section 3.11.1C2, staff is requesting the DRB to review the application for compliance with UDC sections 3.11.1D1 and 3.11.1D3 and provide a recommendation to the Planning and Development Services Director. In related plan review, the same comments as the previous two cases. Department of Transportation and Mobility and Planning Development Services Engineering and Zoning have no objection or adverse comments. Tucson Police Department has the same comment from a crime prevention and design perspective. A 6-foot tall non-climb fence would be the preferred solution. A 6-foot tall chain link fence with prohibited vegetation along the fence line would provide an adequate barrier to prevent abnormal use in the area. To date, we have not received any comments regarding this request from the notice recipients. This concludes staff's presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
No questions at this time. We'll turn it over to the applicant to take a look.
Before I do that, Mark, wasn't it 5-foot chain link, not 6 foot? Your note said 6 in that staff letter.
I apologize. That is correct. It is 5 feet.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Station 18. This is adjacent to, it's actually all city property. And why does it keep doing that to me? Okay. And there is an existing chain link fence that actually runs along the east and the south face. You can actually see in this photograph here that is an existing, the 5-foot high existing chain link fence with slatting already in place. The adjacent property over here is also the city's property. But because of the protective services requirement, we need to screen that. And so we were requesting that this existing fence be our screening. And you can also see here where the same screening is sort of returning onto the south portion of the property, coming along this portion here. And I'll zoom in a little bit. So the request here is to basically use what's on site as our screening requirement instead of building something new for this property.
If I can make a clarification to the actual parcel. So the parcel in its entirety includes the fire station. It includes Grijalva Park and the lot that is adjacent to the fire station to the east. And per the UDC requirement, because this is a protective service, we need screening to adjacent residential properties. And so to the east, Grijalva Elementary School is located on a residentially zoned property, although it's not a residential use. And so the screening is required only on that east boundary between the fire station and Grijalva Elementary. And so there is this existing 5-foot high slatted chain link fence in which we're proposing to leave the fence in place, but re-slat with that vinyl wood material that we've been looking at on the other stations.
Great. Great. So you're going to re-slat those. Yeah, because that does not look opaque in that picture. So that's good.
Correct. And that's a single wall metal material, I believe, that's in there currently. And so we would re-slat that with the more durable double-walled wing slat that we had proposed on the other stations.
Great. Great.
And the same will be carried on the south edge of the property?
So in development and in discussion with Mark Castro and with zoning, it was determined that the south fence is acceptable as is because it's and Mark, you can jump in and correct me if I misspeak here, but because it's screening the fire station from the park on its own property, that screening in conjunction with its existing fencing was acceptable for that particular side of the site.
That's correct. That was an agreement we made with the site review team, that we were really screening, even though this fire station is located on a parcel, like Ashley explained, that encompasses Grijalva Park. It would make more sense to use the existing screening from the project site, which is the fire station.
So this is the school right here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any comments from the DRB?
Well, I would just say, per the last two discussions, this seems like a more straightforward, proposal.
I agree.
Any issues?
Yes.
Okay, maybe we can get to a motion then.
I guess I'll have a go since I
Thank you,
hate it.
Susanna.
The Design Review Board, DRB, has reviewed the proposed design development option and recommends to the Planning and Development Services Director approval, finding the application in compliance with the criteria established in UDC section 3.11.1.d.1 and .3 attachment A, with no additional comments or conditions.
Great, thank you, Susanna. There's a motion on the table in a second.
I'll second the motion.
Great, thank you. I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. And thank you, Design Review Board. Thank you, applicant. And thank you, staff. That concludes our the cases for this morning. Is there any staff announcements?
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the board, we already have 2 cases lined up for the next DRB meeting of May 7th. That would be the Rialto building that you already reviewed, so they have resubmitted their materials. So you'll be seeing that next week. And also another case is the conversion of an old print shop on Stone Avenue near the cathedral. It's going to be converted into single-family residence, and so that needs to be reviewed by the DRB as well.
Interesting. Thank you. Well, that's the end of our agenda. If there are no further comments, we can adjourn. All right. We are adjourned in time for your 9 o'clock meeting, if you have one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank
Goodbye,
you very
everyone.
much.
Good weekend.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.